Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hey everyone, this is James Hamilton Healy. Thanks again for joining me. And today I'm speaking with Michael Roth, who is an experienced and dedicated holistic addiction and wellness specialist. He's practicing in Ventura County, California. He's been there for over 35 years, right, Michael? That's quite a while. And he is here to help us understand how his special approach to this holistic side of things can really find success for those struggling with different kinds of addiction. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. So let's first tackle this word holistic, because I know it has a lot of different meanings for different people. And sometimes it doesn't always correlate to what it is that you are actually doing, right? So first, describe to us what you mean by holistic addiction and wellness and how this kind of ties into how you're helping your clients.
Okay. Well, for me, holistic is the mind-body connection. Mm-hmm. So let's use addiction. Somebody comes in and they have an addiction and they say, gee, I want to stop the addiction. Well, often there's a blind spot. So I use muscle testing or energy work to help the client determine whether they truly are congruent with stopping the behavior. Also, in holistic, we deal with nutrition and structure. Most addiction recovery therapies are, you're talking, which is very, very valuable, in support groups. But I have found that something called blocked recovery, people want to recover, people want to lose weight, and then there's a part of them, what I call a blind spot, which gets in the way, and then they sabotage what they say they want. So that's my approach and what I call holistic.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's more of a mind and body connection, whereas a lot of times when we think about addiction treatment, like you were saying, it's mostly focusing on the mind and not tying the two together.
Exactly.
Now, can you describe, I know your strategies and you work with a lot of different people, there are many different addictions out there, so to speak. Can you describe at least one big problem that you specialize in?
Sure. So I specialize in helping men get free from sex and love addiction. And I'm going to say also intimacy anorexia.
Can you describe the differences between those? Is there a difference between sex and love addiction? Are they one and the same? Or
well, there's definitely overlap. But for sex addiction, compulsive masturbation, voyeurism, going to places of massage, and then having what they call the happy ending. And the biggie is, internet pornography. Mm-hmm. So that would be, quote, a sex addiction. Love addiction, the individual seeks validation. So they can have multiple partners without either one of them knowing about it, unless it's polyamorous. They become their whole life revolves around, the other person. They get their validation, their esteem from another person, and they call that, the qualifying person, even though it's very, very destructive. That's more of the love part. And then in that, there can be a sexual piece, fantasy, masturbation, and on and on.
Right. And these can be impacting someone's world quite dramatically, correct?
Oh, it completely, yes. The answer is yes. Yeah. I mean, with love addiction, there's so much pain, in relationship to people choosing certain partners. There's abuse, and the individual is unable to let go, and they perseverate and ruminate about that individual. That individual becomes the source and focus of their life. And they may be in a committed relationship or be married at the same time. And then with sex addiction, there's so much shame. I mean, that's the big piece. Unlike, alcohol, you abstain and it's really easy. I mean, it's not like it's easy to do, but, you stay away from it. With sex addiction, it's just part of life. And for a lot of people, there's denial, there's secrets, there's hiding out. When everybody goes to bed, they'll go up to the computer and fantasize and spend hours and hours on the computer. And it really, really affects them. And then they feel bad about themselves because they say, I want to stop, but I'm not going to do it again. And then sure enough, they're back at it. They're powerless over it, usually until they get caught by their partner. And that's when, unfortunately, a lot of the men then seek some sort of recovery and want coaching.
Right. Yeah. Because they've been through the cycle, right? That they yes. tried in their own way. And I imagine a big fear around seeking help in this area is just kind of the shame and embarrassment. Is this correct?
Totally. You're exactly right. Yes. There's in the sex addiction world, the love addiction, people don't want anybody to know. There's a huge shame piece. I mean, in all addiction, there's shame.
Yeah.
But I have found that, saying to somebody, yeah, I'm an alcoholic and I'm in recovery versus I'm a sex addict in recovery. Somehow there's this image that sex addicts are perverts, that sex addicts are molesters, and that's, there might be some, but that isn't the deal. These are regular people like you and I who fantasize and have very little freedom around it.
Right. And it's probably much more common than anyone really realizes.
Millions of people have an addiction to that. Yes. Internet pornography, big.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's now kids are getting involved, and that's their view, at least with boys, their view of women. And it's very, very unrealistic, and it's all fantasy based. So then when they finally have a relationship, they have no clue as to how to be intimate, or it affects their performance because they're so used to the drama and the dopamine and the chemical release that they're not able to fully be with the person they're with and even be able to have pleasure.
Right. What they're experiencing through the porn world or whatever is so easy to access, like you said, isn't reality.
Totally not reality. Totally not. And then they try to bring that into their partner and they're bored.
Right.
And, I had a woman tell me the other day, she's a single woman, that when she would pleasure herself, she wasn't able to have an orgasm. She needed the visual stimulation of pornography online to actually achieve an orgasm. And I'm saying this is a little bit different. She doesn't have an addiction, but she would use the pornography as a way to pleasure herself. She's not in a relationship, so it's
right, yeah,
a little bit different.
What are some of the most common fears then that someone might have, other than the shame piece, obviously, about trying to break free from their sex and love addiction? Is it just that they don't think they can? It's just like, this is a part of me, I can't really do it, or what if it doesn't work, or what?
Well, those are all, I think, valid points. But if we go really, really deep, what I have found is that the pornography, the affairs, all that brings an aliveness to that person. It gives them, and the thought of giving that up, which has been such a part of them, it can be very, very difficult for people, because then they have to substitute something else. So that's what I have found is the biggest deal. People get depressed, they go through withdrawals. How can I not do this anymore? And then on and on. How can I live without this person in a relationship, being in a relationship with him? And then the whole mind kicks in, and then they start perseverating about it. And that's the big one. How can I live without the person? How can I live without this behavior?
Right. It's almost part of become part of their identity. Like this is who I am, and I need this to be fulfilled.
Yes. And then there's the chemical piece in the brain, the dopamine release. I mean, it's very powerful, very exciting. The person feels alive, very euphoric until the letdown. So that's the part, what I have found that is underlying and has an impact on almost everybody that I've coached is, oh my gosh, do I really want to not do this? How will I get by? This is not enough. That kind of monologue in their head.
Right. And that's where a lot of the strategies that you kind of tie in the holistic, it's not just helping them to curb their behavior, their addiction, but it's to create a different vision of the life, right? That's a little more desirable without this.
Definitely that. And then even before that, anybody who comes in or contacts me, I do a lot of work over Skype and FaceTime, or, coaching men around the world. But the one question that I ask is, so you say you want to stop, and then the next question is why? Why do you want to stop? Is it because a judge is ordering you to stop? Is it because your wife will leave you if you? What is the why? That's critical. Then we go into, the mind-body connection where they'll actually make a statement. I'm okay abstaining from. It's safe for me to abstain from the activity. And if I'm with them live, we'll do a little muscle testing. And if I'm working online or, over Skype or FaceTime, there's a way where you can rotate your neck. And if you're not saying something that you're truly congruent with, you won't be able to turn your neck as far to that one side. Yeah, that's part of the repatterning that we do down the road.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these specific strategies that I know you have been using and fine-tuning, really. The shadow work you had told me about and the somato-emotional repatterning. Can you describe some of these?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So with the shadow work, it involves chairs. So you set up a couple of chairs in a room, and the person, let's say I'm sitting in a chair right now as you and I are speaking, and I'll have another chair in front of me, and I'm actually going to dialogue with the addiction. So I'm Michael, and I want to get, what's underneath, and we go back and forth. I take the position of the addiction back to Michael, and we go back and forth. And that reveals a lot. That's where shame will come up. Shame is a shadow. We can do the same thing with shame, actually putting a voice to the shame, putting a voice to the anger. And it reveals for the individual a lot of information. They get to discover things that were completely underneath their radar. Really powerful work. And then the somato-emotional repatterning, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I use it as initially to discover if there's a block to the person's recovery. So they'll make a statement, like I said, I'm okay not masturbating for 90 days, as an example. And then they'll turn their neck. And if when they rotate their neck to the right and the left, if it's even, bilaterally symmetrical, then we know they're congruent with that statement. However, if they make the statement, I'm okay abstaining from masturbating, and then one side, I'm going to call it locking up, then we know they're not congruent, that there's a blind spot. There's a payoff for the person to not give up the activity. And then with that, once we discover and they could feel, oh my gosh, I can feel that. My neck didn't go all the way. And then we have a conversation about it. So what's the payoff for you? What's the benefit of not giving up the activity? Powerful work. And that prevents relapse or mitigates the possibility of relapse.
Right. Yeah. And then you're back into that cycle, or I used to call it the relapse roller coaster.
Yeah.
You're up and down and up and down.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, this block to recovery, you can use it with alcohol. You can use it with drugs.
Yeah.
You can use it with, people that you're involved with that you don't want to be involved with, that are destructive, to really see if you're willing to give up that activity or that individual. And most of the time, initially, they're not. There's a part of them that doesn't want to give it up, and they're not aware of it. So this process brings it into the light for the individual. Wow, I didn't know that.
It's really diving into the more of the subconscious then, right?
Yes, it is. Exactly. In a non-invasive way. They're making the statements, they're turning their neck, they're doing all the work for themselves, because for me to tell them doesn't do anything. It's all about self-discovery. Yeah. That's where the work is.
Yeah, I believe that's where, and correct me if I'm wrong, where a lot of the big gains are going to be made is when someone discovers it and makes that decision for themselves. And you said you start with that. Why do you want to change? And sometimes if someone's being told by their boss because they got caught at work, or by the court because they're in trouble with the law, that's not going to work as well as when they finally decide for themselves it's time to make the change. Yeah.
And I'm interested in people who are committed to transforming their life, because again, as you know, addiction kills, which is, one of the reasons I got into it. One of the reasons I got into it for this next chapter of my life, really wanting to save people's lives. And when I say that, we know that chemical addiction could do that physiologically. Process addictions do it in a different way. It's very insidious, very slow. But to me, it's destroying a part of them.
Sure. It can destroy relationships and...
Oh, it does.
Your financial well-being, all kinds of different things, right?
Yeah, because in the world of sex and love addiction, especially sex addiction, when the man or the woman, because it goes both ways now, but for this conversation, we'll use men. When their wife or their partner, girlfriend finds out that they're, masturbating to pornography, and they haven't been with their partner for a while, the woman, the partner, takes it personally. Wow, you prefer a video over me? The betrayal and, the lying, and then, it's a whole thing. It's a whole deal. It impacts everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot of hurt there.
A lot of hurt, yes.
Takes a lot of time to work through that. Well, yeah. You started telling us a little bit of why you got into this, and can you elaborate on what led you to this line of work? It's very fascinating.
Well, I grew up in a family with addiction and lost a loved one to process addiction, to gambling. And so the whole addiction world is very close to me. And then I discovered for myself, and I'm now in recovery for sex and love addiction. I would fall in love with people, and being in relationships thinking, the one I'm in is not the one, it's something outside of myself, which is really what I discovered, that I was giving other people power and validation instead of kind of really looking at loving myself and loving the part of me. And I saw how destructive it was for me, the sex and the love addiction, and wanted to make a difference for other people and believed I could. I've been a mind-body practitioner for over 30 years. So I've got the skill set and the coaching and the techniques. And I thought, what, I'm going to take what I used to do, the work, and help men who suffer and who have absolutely no freedom around it, and hopefully transform their lives. Help as a facilitator, not like I'm doing it, but to help facilitate them to transform their lives.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And giving back and helping others like that is so powerful for your purpose, and keeps that mission going, right? Your daily mission.
Yes.
Can you provide us with any examples of how you've helped your clients? Maybe, you don't have to use names by any means, but something that might help the listeners relate to an example that they might know someone in their world that might fit this kind of model, I guess?
Sure. So I'll give you a couple real quick. So there's a couple that I coach, and one of the participants, if you will, one of the people in the relationship, I consider having intimacy anorexia. And what that is the partner needs or creates distance from the other partner. And they might do that through blaming, shaming, making the other person wrong, but they need distance. So when things are really good and things are really close, they hit their capacity, and then they'll somehow create a fight, an argument to create distance. And it has an impact in the bedroom, because if there's distance, there's not going to be any kind of closeness. And for the participant or the partner, it can be very, very difficult, very self-demeaning, and just a very, very difficult place to be. And we've had really good success in this one area with this one couple where, she has made huge progress in that area, huge, expanding her capacity to actually be with a partner without needing to make him wrong so she can have distance. And the other one that comes that I'm currently coaching now is a man who asked me to help him stop masturbating and using pornography, internet pornography. And he's had really, really good success. He's in a committed relationship, and once you're sober from compulsively masturbating or having a level of sobriety from pornography, your mind, your brain becomes clearer, much clearer. Yeah. Similar to, the person who drinks, and they've been drinking for years and years. And then, after 30, 60, 90 days of not drinking, there's a greater level of clarity for them. It's the same thing with this, with process addictions. Same deal.
Yeah.
Your brain becomes healthier, clearer.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably seeing a lot of gains in the energy of the brain is being spent on other more healthy areas versus those old compulsive avenues the synapses are used to firing on, right?
Exactly. Very good. Yes.
Yeah, cool. What's probably one of the more important questions someone should ask themselves when they're considering, breaking free from an addiction? It doesn't have to be the sex and love, using holistic strategies, right? Like this is, maybe they've tried other things before. Maybe they've gone to AA, or there's SA, right? Maybe people don't understand that even, that there's Sex Addicts Anonymous, correct?
Yeah, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Sex Love Addicts Anonymous.
Right. So maybe they've tried some of these other things. They don't know what to do. What should they ask themselves when they consider maybe working with someone like yourself?
Well, do you want to stop? Are you aware of what's in the way of you stopping? And would it be helpful for you to have support, accountability, and coaching? A coach takes the person where they are today and works with them from the present moment into the future, versus a therapist who deals more with the past, looking at those different issues. For me, it's good to know, what happened. And then there's like, okay, well, now what? I understand I had some abuse, I was hit, punished and all that stuff. But now here I am today. From today forward, I want to have sobriety. I want to be able to have a healthy relationship. I want to learn how can I be intimate? And if you ask those questions and you want that, having a coach can be very, very helpful and make a big, big difference in helping you transform what you'd like to transform.
Right. And I know from personal experience myself, seeking help from holistic addiction specialists, years ago and finding great success with it. So if someone is coming to work with a coach versus going to a 30-day treatment program, they're going to get more of a customized, personalized program to move them from where they are now to where they want to go, correct?
Yes. Now, in the world of treatment programs, very, very powerful and very effective, because usually when the person, I was going to say registers, but actually admits themselves, or there's an intervention and they're in that, they're sequestered in an environment where they actually are forced to abstain for at least 30 days. Now, is 30 days enough? Absolutely not. But it's a place to start. Once the person has the level of sobriety, the mind-body techniques are very, very effective. What's interesting is, too, just to kind of, for the audience, there's a lot of mind-body techniques out there. Psychotherapists use EMDR, which is very powerful and effective. And, there's the tapping and the emotional freedom technique. It's very, very important, I think, and what I've learned over the 30 plus years of doing this kind of work, the person doing the facilitating, asking the questions, having the insights to know where to take the individual client is very, very key. So it's one thing to go buy a book and do tapping, and that could help. But when there's another person facilitating, they know what to ask the person. They know how to kind of guide the person and where to take the person. Makes it much more effective, much more powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. How can people find out more about you and Breakthrough Addiction Recovery if they wanted to work more with you? Maybe they've been, like you're saying, maybe they've been in a treatment program and now they come out and they want to maintain the gains they've made, or maybe they're just thinking about starting out and they want to ask you some questions. Well,
I think that the easiest non-confrontive way would be first to go on, check out my website, breakthroughaddictionrecovery.net. And I've got articles, got videos. I wrote a book on an ebook that you can download for free on sex and love addiction. You can certainly call me for a consultation. But certainly the website would be the first place to go, just to kind of get a feel for who I am. And then if they want to seek me out, there's an email address, and I give my phone number and we can have a conversation.
Perfect. And you mentioned earlier that you work through Skype and other methods to be able to help people all over the place, not just there in California. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, I have most of the people that I see is not local, but more remote. Right. Interesting enough.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Do you have any last thoughts or bits of wisdom for the listeners?
I would say that for those of you who are listening and you are stuck, there's hope. You don't have to be stuck. And I'm committed and committing the next chapter of my life to helping men get free from sex and love addiction.
Excellent, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing. And there's so much more. There's a lot of deep work that you're doing. That's fascinating. I encourage listeners, if you have any interest or know anyone who may have interest in this area, and not just the sex and love, right? You spoke earlier that these techniques can work with someone with chemical addictions or other process addictions like gambling. To check out Michael's holistic approach. It's a very powerful stuff. Thanks again, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.